There's not just one way to find potential buyers and prospect. There are multiple different channels and even different iterations within those different channels. And that's why we need to talk a little bit about prospecting channels. So knowing and testing different prospecting channels will allow you to find the best path to your potential customers. We don't want to waste time on ineffective prospecting. What founders normally do is rely on 1 to 2 prospecting channels, and especially ones that don't scale, ones that are more difficult to repeat for their first sales rep. So this becomes a stumbling block for their future team. If founder sales is built on prospecting channels that their first sales reps can't use, those first sales reps are going to have to go back and figure out again how to prospect. And it's going to take them a lot of time to learn how to get people interested and engaged in talking about your product and the problems that you solve. So they won't know how to prospect, and those early sales reps will suffer for it. They personally will be disappointed because they won't be hitting their sales targets, and it'll be slower growth for the company. So this is why it's important for founders to spend the time figuring out what channels work best and doing some of this grunt work in sales that isn't glamorous, it's not fun, but it's going to make your team a lot more scalable when you start hiring. So let's list out the different prospecting channels. There's calling. So calling into a prospect to get them interested and open up a conversation. There's emailing. There's working through shared connections and using people that your connections know to find prospect and open sales conversations. There's networking. So going to networking groups and engaging in different associations and different groups of people to find your prospects. There are conferences, so events where your prospects get together to talk about their common interests as whatever ICP you sell into. There's social selling, so using social media like Facebook or LinkedIn to find and communicate with your prospects. There are referrals, so getting people who already know about you to introduce you to other people on their own will and volition. So this is different than shared connections in that it's not you actively asking people to connect you to others. It's they're doing it organically. And then there's inbound, when people are coming to you as prospects who want to talk to you and have sales conversations. So what do you need to do to figure out prospecting channels? You should plan on testing how you and future reps can work within each of these channels. So plan on spending some time in each of these, and that was not an exhaustive list. Maybe there are other prospecting channels you and your startup could use, and you should be testing those to figure out how you can use them to more effectively prospect and sell, and how future reps can do the same. So figure out what works and what doesn't. You want to be running tests, and then document your findings. Make sure you're keeping a record of the effectiveness and any data, any numbers, numerical data you can around what works and what doesn't, and the quality of the results from each channel. You can make any of these methods work, right? There are people who have success across all of these channels, and a lot of people will come and give bad advice, like we talked about before, saying cold calling is the best channel, cold email is the best channel, you should only work through referrals. And the reality is, for different businesses and different business models, each channel is going to work differently, and it's your job to go and figure out what the best channels will be for your business. Maybe there will be one golden channel that's going to work better than absolutely everything else, and maybe it's going to be a mix of 3 of these. Some channels are going to have better conversion rates than others, some will have a better ROI than others, some are going to be more scalable than others, and you need to know which is which. You need to figure out what has the highest ROI, but maybe that one's not scalable. You need to figure out what has the best conversion rate, but maybe that one doesn't have a great ROI because it's expensive to get those conversions. Maybe a lower ROI and lower converting is the most scalable, and when it comes to growing a team, that's what that team needs to focus on. You need to understand what channels work so you can strategically decide what prospecting channels to chase when in your business. So what this looks like is that as a part of founder selling, you're going to do these traditional founder selling methods that are most common and often less scalable. So cold emailing, network, and shared connections, maybe conferences. These are really common channels for founders because it lets founders leverage their time. It helps them get to early adopters and people who are going to be innovators and more likely to sign on and buy before the company has a lot of proven success. But at the same time, you also need to spend time in cold calling, social selling, referrals, and building inbound pipeline where possible. Because any channel you'll want your future team to use, you should spend some time pioneering and figuring out so that they don't have to do that themselves. It'll make their jobs easier, and it'll make that growth simpler when it comes. And of course, you can hire experts in cold calling, social selling, referrals, conferences, cold email. But you should be spending some time there as well because you're going to have to make the strategic and executive decisions on what gets done. You don't want reps deciding what channels to chase because they're going to end up wasting a lot of time. You need to be able to dictate that from the top with information saying, hey, I tried these things. This is what's going to work best for you so that they can go get the sales results you need and they don't have to spend so much time innovating and figuring out what to do. You're going to do that work up front so that every rep doesn't have to repeat that afterwards. And this will, like we're saying, perpetually serve your team. It's going to make their jobs easier, even though it's going to take a little more time and maybe cause a little more frustration for you right now. So now you know the different prospecting channels you have, and you know that you need to spend time in each to build learning for your future sales team. Let's talk about cold calling and some tips you can use in your founder selling to make cold calling successful. I'm talking about cold calling first because it's probably the most hated prospecting channel out there. There's no other channel that people are saying is dead. Like people say, cold calling is dead. It's a great way to generate clicks on a blog article, but no one else is going out and saying cold email is dead or referrals are dead or inbound is dead. People don't say that. They only say that about cold calling because people just really hate cold calling because it's probably the most emotionally and mentally difficult of these prospecting channels, and it also works. If as a founder you expect your early sales reps to cold call, you should spend time cold calling because you're going to learn things there that they're going to need to know, and it's going to make your sales team more scalable. So let's talk about how to deal with gatekeepers. A very common issue in cold calling is dealing with gatekeepers. In part 5 of phase 1, we'll talk about specific cold calling scripts you can use, and I'll give you some examples there. But we also need to know how to deal with gatekeepers because they're the ones we need to talk to before we even get through to our decision maker. So the first tip in dealing with gatekeepers is to be friendly, respectful, and honest. If they ask, hey, why are you calling? I'll often say, hey, I'm with this company and this is a sales call. I was hoping to tell them about what we do, see if it's something they'd be interested in. Be friendly, be open with them, and be respectful. Don't treat them like they're lesser, like it's you and the decision maker up here on this level and they're below in status. Treat them like an equal as a person. And this is the script that I would use. It was like, hey, this is Brandon from Liftoff. Is Sam around? And then the gatekeeper might say, hey, they're not around. And say, no problem. Can I send them an email? And answer the gatekeeper's questions openly and honestly. They might say, hey, what's this about? Why are you calling? Oh, yeah, I'm just hoping to tell them about what we do. I help founders figure out sales and just wanted to see if that's something that they might be interested in. Keep things simple with gatekeepers, answer their questions openly and honestly, and don't try to trick them because they're going to remember the next time you call, and if they don't like you, they can very easily make your life very difficult. And don't be too serious with them either. If I've talked to a gatekeeper 5 times and the decision maker hasn't been around, I'll say, hey, thanks for letting me bug you and interrupt your day. Say silly things like that, keep it light, and build this little incremental relationship with them because they're going to be part of your sales process.
All right, I know I didn't go into too much more detail here on cold calling. Honestly, I'm not sure why. This feels like an oversight. Other specific tips on cold calling, I will give in the copywriting section on how to script and things to say. I would say the big thing is your cold call opener matters a lot less than a lot of people online actually say it does. It's not that important as long as you come across as confident and intelligent and friendly, people are still going to listen to you. And then I think another big thing within cold calling is just your attitude. You can go into cold calling with the attitude of, I'm just going to call, play a numbers game, and the people who say yes will say yes, and I'm not going to push. Or you can go into it with the attitude of, I'm going to go into cold calling, and when I get a connect, I'm going to fight like my life is on the line to get a sales conversation scheduled. And the difference between those two things is going to mean a lot of sets. You can still be respectful, you can still treat people in a humane way, but still be really determined and not take no for an answer. And that's what I would recommend is make sure every time you go to cold call, have that mentality of I am here to schedule meetings because I want to solve these people's problems. And I'm not just going to give up after the first time they tell me no. I'm going to come back and I'm going to push and I'm going to be creative. That's a really great way to do that. And then the last thing I would say for cold calling is figure out the system or the way that you can dial tools, whatever it is, so that you can place as many dials in an hour as possible. That's going to be really important here is cold calling is a numbers game and you have to do a lot if you want to see results and if you want to learn. So really make sure you're doing as much activity here. When you have a block, an hour set aside to cold call, make sure you make as many dials in that hour as possible.
All right, next let's talk about some tips for cold email. So for cold email, we want to find ways to get ICP emails at scale. That's the first thing we need to do to figure out cold email. If you don't have a bunch of email addresses to send emails to, you're never going to be able to truly figure out cold email. After we figure out ways to get our emails at scale, and I'll touch on this more in the lead sourcing in phase 2 of the course, the next thing we do is build sequences of cold emails to build an overall message. So for cold email, you're not just going to send one email. You're probably going to be sending 2 to 5 emails over the course of weeks. You don't want to bombard and annoy people with your emails. That's not a great way to prospect. You want to be ethical in your prospecting, but you also want to build an overall message. You don't want to try to say too much in one email. Focus on one thing and have a logical sequence of messages that are going to help lead people into conversion, while each email on its own could open up its own sales conversation. So you want to build a sequence of cold emails to build an overall message when you're doing your cold email prospecting. The next tip we want to follow is following the Can-Spam Act. So there are several $1,000 fines that you can receive from the government if you violate the Can-Spam Act. I don't know how often this actually happens, but it's always a great practice to make sure you're following the law when you're prospecting. So the high-level things here that people don't do, I think there are about 7 rules, and I'll link those below on the government's website where they actually talk about the specifics of the Can-Spam Act. But at a high level, you want to make sure you give people the option to opt out of your emails or unsubscribe. Normally what I'll do is just have a line in small text italics at the bottom of my email that says, if you want me to never ever email you again, just reply stop to this email. And then once people reply stop, I do manually take them off. Don't be misleading in your cold emails. So for cold unsolicited emails, it's illegal to be misleading, so you can't have your headline or your subject line be different from what the body of your email is. So make sure that you're accurately and honestly representing what the email is about in your subject line, and then include a valid address. That's another part of the Can-Spam Act, or the law, is that you have to include a valid business address in your email. And you can just do that within your email signature. So another thing to do when you're cold emailing is to test messaging and value props in subject lines. So a great way to do that is use a tool that can track opens. So if you have a tool that will be able to tell you out of the 300 emails you just sent, how many people open that email, you can test value propositions and subject lines en masse by viewing how many people open and interact, click through, or respond to your email. So this is going to be a great way to do a little marketing and test your messaging to figure out what subject lines and topics people care about that you can then bring into cold calling and other channels. And then another great thing to do when you're cold emailing is automate as much as possible. So having a CRM or a tool like MailChimp is going to be great because it's going to let you automate a lot of this process. And then we're going to give specific copywriting instructions in part 5 of phase 1. So don't worry about any of that right now. The next channel we'll give some advice on is shared connections. So with shared connections, the first thing you want to do is get in touch with everyone you know to let them know about your startup and see if they know an ICP. So people who work in service businesses or MLMs, what they do is they will make sure that everyone that they're personally connected to, that they have a relationship with, knows what they're doing as a profession. So when that person has the need or someone they know has the need, they will refer or do business with that service professional. So shared connections is going to be similar to referrals, except we're soliciting those referrals. And that's why I actually categorize this as a different channel. I see referrals as a form or similar to inbound where it's organic, and shared connections is solicited or inorganic where we're actually chasing this. Shared connections, you're going to get in touch with everyone you know and say, hey, do you know anyone that could benefit from what I'm doing? I'm trying to figure out sales in the startup. Do you know anyone I could talk to that might be a potential customer? I promise to be respectful and a good person to interact with. Next, the other thing you can do for shared connections is look for leads on LinkedIn that share a connection with you, and then message and email the connection asking if they know that person, if they'd be comfortable making an introduction. So basically what this would be is on LinkedIn, I say, hey, I'm doing a search, I'm filtering however I would, and I see, hey, this is a potential prospect that I have, and it looks like they know this person that I'm connected to that I actually know. And so I could send them a message and say, hey, I saw that you're connected to this person on LinkedIn. Do you actually know them? They look like a person I'd want to talk to about my new company, see if they could benefit from what I do. Would you be comfortable making an introduction? And chase shared connections that way. Talk to people, ask if they know anyone, and then go actually find those people and ask your shared connections to intro you. And when you're doing shared connections, you're doing this work, make sure you give people a good experience. The prospects you end up talking to need to have benefited from talking to you. Make sure that you're not just turn and burn with this and you're being bad to people, because your reputation matters. And if the word gets back to the person that made the intro that you were rude, that you weren't good to talk with, that you were transactional, that's going to burn bridges and it's going to really hurt you in the long run. So that's some advice you can use when approaching shared connections as a prospecting channel.
All right, I actually want to go through and show you what this would look like, how to build this search on LinkedIn, just if you're not as familiar. So hopefully you are sending connections to at least 20 people a day on LinkedIn, building your network within your ICP. If that's something you want to set up, I have a VA that does this for me, so happy to, copy paste that for you and get that set up. But what this would look like, let's say that my target market is going to be, I don't know, let's see here. What's a good set of people? Let's say I'm gonna click the search bar and hit enter here. And let's say I'm selling into RevOps organizations. So let's say I'm gonna sell into chief sales officers. So I'm gonna go to I want to click on second connections here, right? People that I'm not connected to, but I share a connection with. And then I'm gonna click into all filters here and just go, and I'm gonna put in a title, chief sales, and I probably am gonna build this search a couple different ways. Then I'm dropping here chief sales officers. And then cool, I have 100+ pages of people that are chief sales officers that I can go talk to. So let's say, I want to, cool, Josh Huffman looks like an interesting lead in this case. And I want to say, hey, Cindy Harlan is a shared connection. I actually used to work with Cindy. So what I would do is I'd hop over, I would, copy Josh's name here. And then I would go over to Cindy and I would send Cindy a message. And I might say, hey, Cindy, it's been forever. I owe you some baby pictures because that's something she always really liked when we worked together. Hey, I saw that on here you're connected with Josh Huffman. Not sure if you know him personally, but I would like to get in touch with him. And obviously you can word this different. And then I would just put in a blurb here about like, here's what I'm working on, like just describe my startup. I think he might be interested. Can you make an introduction on LinkedIn or email? And then what I might even do, oh, geez. Okay, I'm going to delete that. Cool. Because I didn't actually need to send that message. I hit enter. And then if you want to take this to the next level, what you can even do underneath that is go ahead and you can even write out a script for what they would send them. So you can say, hey, if you're willing to make that introduction, I wrote this up, so you can just copy paste it. So that's what that specific tactic could look like. And, this would be going through spending an hour or 2 or 3 or, more a day, just going through all these connections, messaging people, asking for intros, and you're going to get intros here. It's going to work.
Next, we'll talk a little bit about networking. So networking is finding social or networking groups that your ICP belongs to. So this could be Facebook groups, this could be associations, this could be local group chapters, or this could just be general meetups of business professionals. Any of these things could count as networking. It's getting in person or in groups of people that share interests and contributing to the group and finding prospects or referrals there. So really what you need to do to make networking successful is go and form relationships. You can't go into it thinking that you're just going to receive. You have to focus on giving first. Be a go-giver and not a go-getter. So be curious about what other people do, and people would be curious about you. This is a great principle I've found, is if you're curious about what other people do and how you can help them, people will reciprocate that. Not all the time, but it will happen most of the time. So those are some quick and easy tips on how to make networking as a prospecting channel more successful for you. All right, next let's talk about using conferences as a prospecting channel. So first thing, you don't have to be exhibiting to use conferences as a prospecting channel. So you can go as an attendee and still have great leverage at a conference, and a lot of marketers at big companies do this. Even they'll decide not to do an expensive booth and they'll just go to the conference and still have great results from the conference without exhibiting. And don't shy away from small hotel ballroom conferences. this might be where you can actually have better in-depth conversation because they're going to be more intimate gatherings. So don't just go for the big conferences in your industry. You might also want to test smaller conferences. Use these as networking events if you're not exhibiting. So approach this similarly to networking, where you're just trying to form relationships, be curious about other people, knowing that if you're curious about others, they'll eventually ask, what do you do? And you'll get to do a little sales presentation. So across this as well, when you're at conferences, work to form relationships. You'll see most of these people again the next year when you attend again. If it is a conference, you'll end up attending again. So don't be turn and burn with these. Don't burn bridges. Make sure that you're always leaving on a positive note and you're being constructive with these relationships, because a lot of times people won't trust you the first time they see you, but the second and third time they will, and they'll be more open to doing business with you. In conferences, it's also a great place to do customer development and interview your ICP. So if you need to do some market research or understand better, test messaging, it's a great place to get in front of a lot of people in a couple of days and gather that information and do some customer development. And in conferences, one other thing you'll want to make sure you're doing is religiously track who you talk to and what you talk about. Having a CRM is going to be really important, especially like the CRM I use, Pipedrive, has an app on my phone where I can jump into a deal real quick or make a new deal and then do a voice recording a minute after I talk to someone that I can listen to later on or transcribe that'll serve as notes in the future when I want to do more outreach or when I go to the conference next time. So those are some tips you can use when you go to conferences as a prospecting channel and figuring that out for your future sales reps. All right, the next channel we'll talk about and touch on briefly is social selling. So for social selling, here are a few tips that we want to know moving into social selling. So a lot of people think social selling is being spammy on Facebook and LinkedIn, and this is the biggest mistake you can make in social selling. Don't be spammy. This is the worst. It turns people off, you'll get flagged in the system, and it's not going to work long term. If you get a few short-term wins, it won't be a sustainable result. One thing we want to do on social selling, the first highest level activity we can do is if your ICP is active on social, engage with them. So if you're selling to VPs of marketing, they're going to be normally pretty active on LinkedIn. So engage with them. Comment back on their comments. Comment on their posts, like their comments. Just show up in their newsfeed, in their notifications, and be seen. Don't try to be salesy. Just contribute to the conversations they're taking part in. Next, so specifically, follow them, like their posts, reply to their comments. Pretty simple stuff, but a lot of people skip it because it can seem tedious. After generating some recognition with those prospects, reach out and be direct. Send them a video message or send them a DM and say, hey, saw that you do this. This is what I do. Want to see if this is something you'd be interested in talking about more, or whatever that quick pitch is. And where you can, use video here. It's going to make you more personal and help you get more conversions. It's just going to be more authentic and trustworthy for those people that are getting messages. For every probably 50 text messages they get on a social platform, they're getting maybe 1 or 2 video messages. So be the 1 or 2 video messages so that you took a couple minutes and you actually care about talking to them instead of copy pasting a message. So those are some tips you can use in social selling. All right, the next channel you need to be testing is referrals as a founder. And we're going to give some tips on how to make referrals work. So the first thing is just ask. When you're talking to customers, past customers, just ask for referrals. It's a little shameless, it's a little self-centered, but if you do it in a respectful way, no one's going to be deeply bothered by it, especially if don't say, hey, who can you refer me to? Or who do you know that needs what I sell? Ask it in a really genuine, respectful way. Hey, is there anyone you can think of that might benefit from what we do? Is there anyone you know that I should be talking to about this? Really be less direct, less pushy with it. Be respectful and accept that a lot of people are going to say no, but some people will have ideas and will want to help you out. Have a unique and meaningful customer touch points to keep you top of mind. This is another way to generate referrals without asking, is have just ways to keep in touch and be top of mind with people. Reach out, send them a card, send them a trinket, send them a little branded whatever piece of swag so that they're thinking about you, things that are going to be meaningful and helpful to them, that are going to help generate goodwill, so that when they meet someone that needs what you have, they're happy to send that person your way. And make it a habit to ask your customers for referrals in genuine ways. And you might even want to plan this as part of your sales process. Just at the end of purchasing, say, hey, great, is there anyone you think you can think of that I should be talking to about this? And accept that people are often going to say no. Don't pressure them, because that's going to ruin the relationship. But if you just give them the chance and you make them think for a second, you'll be surprised with the results. And make it about helping others, not yourself. So don't make asking for referrals about what you can benefit, but how you can help and serve other people. Like I've said, is there anyone you know that would benefit from this? So don't make it about yourself, make it about others. And that's going to be another great way to make referrals more successful when you use them to test as a prospecting channel. So the last channel we'll talk about is inbound. And inbound is the only indirect channel here, where referrals is kind of split between the two. Inbound is purely indirect instead of a direct prospecting channel. So you need to be building inbound early on. This isn't a channel you should be wondering if will work for you. You need to figure out how to make it work with you, because outbound alone will have diminishing returns. As you add headcount to sales, you'll get fewer and fewer results per salespeople, but having strong inbound leads can fight that. So the people you try to sell to will research you online, and you need to have content for them. So make sure you're publishing useful information for these people where they will be searching to research you or research the problems that you solve. So understand what that buyer's journey is, what research they do, and then show up there. Publish content there. This is going to be a great way to get in front of potential customers and the people who are evaluating your company. Inbound and referral leads close easier than any other channel, and so investing early on in inbound is going to be great. And this might mean hiring an agency to do work with the intention to bring it in-house later on. This might be hiring a fractional VP of sales who can help you think strategically around what inbound is going to look like and what demand generation work you need to do. But this is going to be something you need to do because inbound and referral leads close easier than any other channel. So they're going to be the most efficient way to grow your company and get sales. So if you can consistently create useful, and by using educational and or entertaining content and media for your ideal customer profile, they'll come to you when they need what you sell. This is a great way to prime people for sales outreach. If you're marketing them and you have high quality content, if you cold call them, they're going to be more willing to talk to you. If you get referred to them, they're going to be more willing to talk to you and more willing to buy from you. So if you can consistently show up and show them you're an important player in the space and you have things to say, it's going to make it easier for you to close them if you get connected to them through a direct prospecting channel, and you're going to get more inbound leads. So that is the end of our prospecting module. And with those specific channels, I know I didn't go too deep into each of them. That's because there's so much nuance within each and what works and what doesn't work for each company. So just know that with each prospecting channel, you need to follow general principles, but then figure out and test specifically what's going to work for you and your company. And once again, high level, this idea of prospecting and what's important here is that you can open sales conversations and fulfill those outcomes of founder selling, which is to generate enough revenue to hire a salesperson and then figure out your sales motion, figure out what will work for them for prospecting so that they can hit the ground running and be successful and generate revenue more quickly. And they don't have to go through this expensive period of figuring out themselves or not figuring it out and getting fired or quitting, and you have to start all that process over again.
Hey, good job making it to the end of that long video. I hope that as I went into some of those channels, you had some ideas on how you can make those things work for you or things that you can test out. I think that I didn't go super deep on a lot of these things, but that's okay because I tried to give here really general advice that would apply to any situation. I didn't just want to give you my winning lottery numbers on any channel and how I've made it work in the past. So if you do want to talk through the different prospecting channels, what you should be testing first, or anything else about your prospecting channels, or if you even want to make a game plan on this, come to liftoff.com or revliftoff.com. Sorry, that's REVLIFTOFF.com. You can look at this pretty picture of me. And then you can come down here to the How I Help, grab these Startup Sales Accelerator Workbooks, and then book a one-on-one session with me for 60 or 30 minutes. I'm happy to talk through your startup, the things you're working on, the things you've already tried, and then put together a prospecting plan that you can take and test for the next 2 to 4 weeks, and then iterate on that to figure out what works, book more sales conversations, build your revenue or MRR, and get closer to having a repeatable plan you can hand off to your early sales hires.